Imagine you are walking around with a bucket of water that represents your total financial life. You worked hard to fill that bucket. You traded 40, maybe 50 hours of your week just to get the water level up to the brim. You feel good about it. You feel secure. But then you start walking toward your goals. Maybe that is buying a house or retiring before your back gives out. And you realize something terrifying. The water level is dropping. You are not spilling it. You are not throwing it away. It is just vanishing. By the time you get to the end of the month, the bucket is significantly lighter than the math says it should be. This is the reality for nearly everyone I talk to. They look at their income, they look at their fixed bills, and they subtract the two. On paper, they should have $1,000 left over. In reality, they are transferring money from savings just to cover the credit card bill. That gap between the paper reality and the bank account reality is where financial stress lives. It is not usually one giant mistake, like buying a boat you cannot afford. It is usually a series of 5 specific structural errors in how we view our money. These are not just rookie mistakes either. I see people making 6 figures who fall into these exact same traps because they assume making more money fixes bad architecture. It does not. It just makes the leak more expensive. Before we plug these leaks, I have a small proposition for you. If this video helps you find even $100 of lost income this month, consider subscribing to the channel. That is a pretty solid return on investment for 30 minutes of your time. Now, let us look at the first and most dangerous mistake, which is relying on intuition rather than data. Most people think they know where their money goes. If I asked you right now to list your top 5 expenses, you would probably rattle off rent, car payment, groceries, utilities, and maybe insurance. And you would be wrong. You are missing the stealth categories. The problem is that human brains are wired to remember the big painful payments and forget the small pleasurable ones. We remember writing the rent check because it hurts. We forget the 6 times we tapped our card for coffee, the 3 digital subscriptions we do not use, and that quick trip to the convenience store on Tuesday. This is the difference between budgeting and tracking. A budget is just a plan. It is a wish. Tracking is the forensic evidence of what actually happened. I recently looked at my own spending from a few years ago and found I was spending nearly as much on convenience food, not even nice dinners, just grab-and-go stuff, as I was on my car insurance. I had no idea. I thought I was a frugal person. The data proved I was actually just a hungry person with a debit card. When you fail to track expenses in real time, you are essentially flying a plane with no instrument panel. You set a course at the beginning of the month, but you have no idea if the wind has blown you off track until you crash into the mountain of your credit card statement at the end of the month. The fix here is annoying but non-negotiable. You have to record the transaction the second it happens. Not at the end of the week, because you will forget. Right then. There are apps that sync with your bank, which helps, but I actually prefer the manual friction of typing it in. It forces you to acknowledge the money leaving. It adds a split second of pain to the purchase. That micro pain is good. It is the only thing that counteracts the dopamine hit of buying something new. Here is the twist that ruins even the best trackers. You might have your monthly spending locked down perfectly. You track every coffee. You meal prep. You are a machine. And yet, you are still going into debt. How is that possible? It is because the Gregorian calendar is lying to you. We are conditioned to think in 30-day cycles because that is how we get paid, and that is when the rent is due. But your life is not a monthly event. It is an annual story. This brings us to the second massive mistake, which is forgetting irregular expenses. These are the ghosts of your budget. They are invisible for 10 months of the year, and then they materialize to destroy your savings account in December or July. I am talking about holiday gifts, annual car registration, property taxes, insurance premiums, and that one friend who decides to have a destination wedding. If you look at any single month, these expenses look like emergencies or surprises. But they are not surprises. Christmas happens on the same day every year. Your car registration does not sneak up on you. It has an expiration date printed right on the windshield. When you fail to amortize these costs, that is fancy talk for spreading them out, you create a roller coaster of cash flow. One month you are rich, the next month you are broke. This volatility is stressful. It makes you feel like you are failing, when really you just failed to do the math. The solution to the ghost expense problem is something called a sinking fund. It sounds technical, but it is actually just a savings bucket with a specific name tag. Here is how you do it. Go back through your bank statements for the last 12 months. Find every single expense that did not happen monthly. The vet bills, the Amazon Prime annual fee, the weekend trip to the coast. Add them all up. Let's say it comes to $3,000. Divide that by 12. That gives you $250. Now, you need to add a line item to your monthly budget for irregular expenses in the amount of $250. You take that money and move it to a separate savings account. Do not leave it in checking, or you will accidentally spend it on groceries. Now, when the car insurance bill for $600 shows up in November, you do not panic. You do not put it on a credit card. You just transfer the money from your sinking fund. You have turned a financial crisis into a simple administrative task. This changes the psychological game completely. Instead of dreading the mail, you open bills with confidence because the money is already sitting there waiting to do its job. It effectively flattens your cash flow so every month feels manageable, regardless of what the calendar throws at you. Now, let's escalate the stakes. We have tracked our spending, we have planned for the annual bills, but now we have to decide how much we are actually allowed to spend. This is where human psychology usually trips us up. Mistake number 3 is setting unrealistic categories based on who you wish you were rather than who you actually are. It is the exact same mechanism as a crash diet. You decide that starting Monday you will never eat sugar again, you will run 5 miles a day, and you will live on kale. By Wednesday, you are miserable. By Friday, you are eating a pizza over the sink. Budgeting works the same way. People sit down, fueled by guilt over their past spending, and create a punishment budget. They look at their grocery spending, see they averaged $800 a month, and arbitrarily decide, next month I will do it for $400. No, you won't. You cannot just slice 50% of your consumption habits overnight without a massive lifestyle overhaul. When you set a goal that is too aggressive, you guarantee failure. And when you fail, you don't just overspend by a little bit, you tend to give up entirely. It is the what the hell effect. Once you break the budget, you figure you might as well break it big. You blow the diet, so you eat the whole cake. This leads to a cycle of restriction and binging that is terrible for your net worth. The antidote to the crash diet budget is brutal honesty mixed with slow progress. If you spent $800 on groceries last month, aim for $750 this month. Cut the coupons, buy the generic brands, but do not try to starve yourself into wealth. You also need to build failure into the plan. I call this the wiggle room category. This is $20 or $50 of unallocated cash that sits there for the moment you simply cannot cook dinner and need a takeout burger, or for when you need to buy a gift you forgot about. If every dollar is assigned to a strict survival category, you have zero flexibility. And money, like tall buildings, needs to sway a little bit in the wind, or else it snaps. By giving yourself permission to be imperfect, you actually increase the likelihood that you will stick to the plan long term. The best budget is not the one that looks perfect on a spreadsheet. It is the imperfect one you can actually adhere to for 10 years. That consistency is what builds wealth, not 3 weeks of extreme deprivation followed by a shopping spree. Let's look at the risk profile of your plan. You have a budget that works when the sun is shining. But what happens when it rains? Mistake number 4 is ignoring the emergency fund. This sounds like basic advice, but I am shocked by how many detailed budgets I see that have zero allocation for savings. Every dollar is accounted for: rent, car, food, debt repayment. The balance is zero. That looks efficient, but it is actually incredibly fragile. You are walking a tightrope without a net. If you trip, if the car transmission blows, if you need a root canal, if your hours get cut, you fall straight down into high-interest debt. The hidden cost here is not just the emergency itself, it is the financing of the emergency. If you have to put a $2,000 car repair on a credit card at 25% interest, that repair does not cost $2,000. It costs you $2,000 plus $500 a year in interest until you pay it off. That interest eats up your future cash flow, making it even harder to save for the next emergency. It is a death spiral. A budget without an emergency fund is just a waiting game until your next financial disaster. You need to treat your emergency fund contribution like a bill. It is not leftover money. It is a bill you pay to yourself to buy your own security. Even if it is only $50 a month, that money needs to leave your checking account and go into a separate, high-yield savings account. It needs to be inconvenient to access. You do not want to be able to transfer it while you are standing in line at the electronics store. This fund changes your demeanour. When you have 3 to 6 months of expenses sitting in a boring savings account, you walk differently. You are not terrified of your boss. You are not losing sleep over a weird noise your car is making. You have insurance against life's chaos. Prioritize this before you worry about maximizing your investment portfolio. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. You need that solid foundation of liquidity first. Finally, we arrive at the mistake that turns good savers into confused spenders over time. Mistake number 5 is failing to adjust the budget as life changes. I call this the zombie budget. It is a plan that is dead but keeps walking around eating your brain. You set this budget 2 years ago. Back then, rent was cheaper, you didn't have a dog, and inflation hadn't spiked the price of eggs by 40%. You are still trying to force your current life into that old framework, and you are frustrated because the math won't work. Life is dynamic. Your income changes, hopefully upward. Your expenses change, usually upward. The economy shifts. If you live in New York, your grocery inflation looks different than if you live in Dallas, but the principle is the same. A budget is a living document. It has to breathe. If you get a raise, you need to decide immediately where that extra money goes, or it will just disappear into lifestyle creep. If your commute changes and you spend more on gas, you have to cut something else. You cannot just hope it works out. You have to sit down every quarter, or at least every time there is a major life event, and recalibrate. Ask yourself, is this realistic? Are my goals still the same? If you don't, you are navigating with a map of a city that has been torn down and rebuilt. Budgeting is not a punishment for being bad with money. It is the tool you use to tell your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. It is about control. By avoiding these 5 mistakes, by tracking honestly, planning for the annual ghosts, setting realistic goals, building that safety net, and updating your plan, you move from anxiety to authority. You stop being a victim of your bank account and start being the manager of it. It takes time. You will mess up. You will have a month where you blow the budget on something stupid. That is fine. Just reset the numbers and go again. The goal is not perfection. The goal is trajectory. If you are moving generally in the right direction, you are winning. If you found this breakdown helpful, or if you have a budgeting horror story you want to share for the benefit of the class, leave a comment down below. It helps the algorithm, but it also helps us gather data on what is actually happening in the economy. And do not forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive. Thanks for listening, and I will see you in the next one.